In 2022, electric car company NIO delivered 122,000 electric cars, which was a record. It was an improvement of 34% compared to the previous year. But whilst doing this, they also racked up their 5th consecutive year of massive losses. In fact, NIO's debt has never been spiraling out of control so quickly as it is now. Hello my friends and welcome to the channel. I'm the Electric Viking, great to see you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to our Patreon supporters. Really appreciate having you here. If you want to be a patron, I'll put a link in the description, and also YouTube members. If you want to be a YouTube member, you do get to see a fair few of our videos several days in advance of everyone else. In January this year, NIO delivered 8,500 vehicles, which was a little bit less than what they delivered in January of last year. But in February, they had a much better month than they did in February of last year. They delivered 12,000 electric cars, which was an increase of 43% from last year. That was a pretty good result. In fact, in December of last year, NIO had their best month ever, delivering nearly 16,000 electric cars, which sounds great, but unfortunately, the fourth quarter of 2022 was a bit of a tough one for NIO. I talked about the likelihood of this happening in a video that I made, well, I think it was in about November when I sold my shares. I believe that the CEO of NIO loves to spend money. In fact, he spends money like it's going out of style. And here's the biggest problem. While he's spending money, the company's actual profits on each car are declining. In fact, in the fourth quarter of 2022, NIO's profit was just 3.9% per car, down from a 13.5% forecast. That's a big difference. 13.5% margin compared to a 3.9% margin. And this is the lowest that NIO has posted for more than 2.5 years, since the second quarter of 2020. NIO said that R&D and other expenses totaled RMB 7.5 billion. So about $1.5 billion US, significantly higher than expected due to increased spending on developing new models, technology, and various other factors. Well, this is what I told investors a long time before these results were reported. NIO love spending money. They spend it on all kinds of things that their competition do not. Swapping stations where you can go in, drive in, they're a cool thing, but whether or not it's wise for NIO to be spending so much money on them now is another question. Anyway, you drive in there and you can get your battery swapped out in only a few minutes' time. But considering NIO is selling a very small number of cars, justifying these massive expenses, in my view, is difficult to do. And I don't understand how they can do it. The other thing that NIO spends a lot of money on is building big, fancy NIO houses where you can go in there and hang out, get a coffee, look like you're rich, basically. They are very expensive buildings that NIO buys in order for its customers, its new clientele, to chill. Kind of like what you might do if you bought a Ferrari, go to some sort of Ferrari place. But NIO's not Ferraris. Yeah, they're great. But NIO is not selling cars for $500,000. NIO presented its financial results for 2022 just a few days ago. The Chinese EV maker was able to increase its deliveries and sales in 2022, which is a good thing. But its annual loss also grew massively due to development costs for new models, the company's expansion, and spending money on things that I just think aren't really necessary for the company's future success. In fact, they're definitely not necessary. NIO delivered 122,486 EVs last year. That was 34% more than in 2021. Its 2022 revenue was 49.3 billion yen. That's 7.1 billion US dollars. That's an increase of 36% year on year. But the loss for the year was 14.4 billion yen, which is $2.1 billion. That's 260% more than in 2021. 260% more than in 2021. NIO's long-term debt for 2021 was 1.52 billion, a 68% increase from 2020. NIO long-term debt for 2020 was $0.91 billion. NIO long-term debt for 2019 was $1.02 billion, a 500% increase from 2018. Now you can see the trend here. NIO's debts are continuing to increase. And whether or not it will ever make a profit, no one really knows. The reality is NIO is competing in the toughest car market in the world. Yes, it's the biggest, but it's also the most cutthroat. It's also where margins now are very slim. Whilst the fourth quarter of 2022 was a good one for NIO, with 40,000 vehicles delivered, like I said, the gross margin per car was way lower than anyone expected. Now, NIO has a number of reasons, excuses for why losses increased. They say they decided recently to discontinue their old electric vehicle platform and take relatively recent models off the market or replace them with more advanced versions based on the company's NT 2.0 platform. Therefore, inventory provisions, accelerated depreciation on production facilities, which are no longer needed, and losses on purchase commitments for the existing generation of ES8, ES6, and EC6 made the company lose money. The truth is, that is only a small part of the story. I mean, realistically, is that even believable considering NIO doesn't make most of their cars themselves? JAC actually produces most of NIO's cars. And the fact that NIO is saying they needed to write off this relatively new EV technology so soon seems to me a bit of a strange thing to do. But realistically, NIO is the company spending more on things that no one else is than anyone else. Sounds strange, doesn't it? But it's true. NIO now has more than 1,000 battery swap stations around the world, with about 90% of those, 95% in fact, in China. But the truth is, most customers don't really need them. I mean, how often do you drive 1,000 kilometers in a day? It's a rare occurrence. And when you do, you can just change your car. Considering charging speeds continue to increase, that's an option that most people now are willing to accept. They don't need a special NIO battery swapping station, which costs NIO hundreds of thousands of dollars to build. As reported a few weeks ago, NIO also wants to expand this network of charging stations not only in China but all over Europe, and it's begun building them across the continent. Now, in addition to that, NIO are considering switching to cylindrical battery cells, which is what General Motors have just done, and building 2 new EV plants for its announced budget brands. It's also started construction on a facility to build out its own battery plant. All of this will cost money, which obviously is not covered by revenues of sales of current generation vehicles. NIO doesn't sell anywhere near enough cars to be able to sustain this kind of expenditure. I really don't understand where NIO is going to get the money from to do everything they plan on doing over the next couple of years. It doesn't actually seem possible or logical. CEO and founder William Lee said NIO has made positive strides in the research and development of core technologies and competitive products, infrastructure deployment, and global market expansion, laying a solid foundation for the company's long-term growth. But they're still selling very few electric cars in Europe, which is where they need to go to start making some serious money on their electric cars. Now, it sounds like Lee is considering maybe having to be more frugal as a company over the coming months. You would think, anyway, considering NIO's debts seem to be spiraling out of control a little bit, but it's actually not the case at all. In fact, he said in 2023, NIO plans to deliver 5 new products based on NIO Technology Platform 2.0, and that the car maker will deploy 1,000 additional power swap stations through Europe and China to further improve holistic user experience and continuously strengthen its competitive advantages in key areas of smart electric vehicles. I love NIO. I love their cars. They're fantastic. NIO's CEO has been very critical of Tesla. He thinks the only thing that Tesla does well is make EVs efficiently while making a profit. But at some point in time, NIO will have to do the same thing. They'll have to start making money. And if they don't, well, the cash will eventually run out. The banks will eventually stop lending, and NIO will more than likely be acquired by one of the surviving automakers. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments. Do you think NIO can keep on spending? Do you think this strategy will work for them? I'm really interested to know. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.